The Moonrise Alpaca farm always smelled faintly of carded fleece and mint, a scent that Clara Vale associated with early light and the quiet clack of her loom. Every Sunday at dawn, before opening her studio in town, she joined the sun salutations with Surrey yoga session held in the eastern pasture. Maribel Stone, the farm's owner, claimed the presence of 27 gentle alpacas increased flexibility and inner peace. Clara doubted the animals contributed much to her hamstrings, but she admired their fibre and liked to run discerning fingers through the air as the herd drifted around the practitioners like soft clouds. On this particular morning, the grass still glittered with dew when Harmony Bliss, the visiting instructor, positioned her Bluetooth speaker on a hay bale and unrolled a saffron yellow mat. Harmony was all iridescent eyeshadow and breathy aphorisms. Inhale the universe, exhale your story. She bowed to the semicircle of townspeople, retirees, weekend tourists, a bored teenager, and to the 27 alpacas who blinked back with grave indifference. Clara found a place at the back so she could observe both students and livestock, notebook tucked into her woven bag in case inspiration for a new pattern fluttered by. Things felt off from the first om. The herd shifted restlessly, stamping and humming, ears swiveling like weather vanes. An alpaca named Aragon tossed his head at the boundary fence, while another, Luna, tried to nose the clasp of the gate. Harmony, oblivious, floated through Warrior 2 and beckoned everyone to root your hooves into Mother Earth. Maribel paced the perimeter with her clipboard, frown carving a valley between penciled eyebrows. Clara noticed sweat purling at the farm owner's temples despite the cool morning. Nearby, Ember Fox, Moonrise's resident dye artist and Harmony's rumoured rival, sat cross-legged on a plaid blanket, sketchbook propped on her knees rather than a mat. Ember's bright crimson braids matched the skeins of chili-red yarn she adored. During the first cycle of sun salutations, a metallic snap cracked the serene air. Clara's head jerked up in time to see the gate swing open. A bucket clanged to the ground, scattering feed across the grass in a spicy-smelling arc. The alpacas lunged forward as one, jostling and kicking. Aragon led the sudden charge straight through the yoga circle, scattering mats like fallen leaves. A panicked cry rose from Harmony, then silenced beneath the thud of hooves. Students leapt aside, some colliding, some curling instinctively into child's pose as the animals streamed past. By the time Clara fought her way clear, Harmony lay crumpled, saffron mat twisted around her ankles, eyes glassy under the morning sun. Sirens wailed 10 minutes later. Paramedics lifted the instructor onto a stretcher, her ankle bent at an impossible angle, bruises blooming wherever a hoof had landed. The herd was herded, ironically, into an adjacent paddock, where they resumed chewing in innocent curiosity. Sheriff Nolan Caldwell arrived, hat askew, and took down statements while deputies photographed hoofprints across crushed foam mats. "Looks like an unfortunate accident," he concluded. "Gate latch must have failed." Clara bent over the broken latch and fingered the snapped rope that had previously reinforced it. The fibres were frayed but also sticky, as though cut with something coated in resin. Accidents rarely carried such deliberate edges. By mid-morning, the scene had emptied of flashing lights, leaving Clara at the fence with her thoughts clattering like shuttlecock against heddle. She had promised to deliver a set of cobalt scarves to the artisan market next week, yet her mind leapt not to dye lots, but to motives. Harmony Bliss, though outwardly ethereal, was known for aggressive self-promotion. Rumour said she wanted a permanent partnership with Moonrise, possibly nudging Ember Fox out of her dye studio or pressuring Maribel for a share of ownership. Financial tension, artistic jealousy, both were threads Clara had untangled before in less dramatic tapestries. She wandered to the storage barn, where Theo Reyes, the teenage stable hand, was sweeping spilled feed into a bin. Chilly red flakes clung to the broom. "Never seen the herd so crazy," he muttered, voice shaking despite forced nonchalance. "Someone mixed cayenne with their pellets. They hate spicy stuff." He thrust the broom toward Clara so she could smell for herself. The peppery tang stung her nose. On impulse, she pulled the pocket loop she used to examine fiber quality from her bag and studied the red dust. Granules of dye glittered among the pepper, tiny garnet scales of carmine pigment she recognized from Ember's signature colorway, dragon's breath. She slipped a sample into an empty spindle case. That afternoon, the Weavers' Guild convened in Clara's workshop above the bakery. While chatter buzzed about loom tension and upcoming craft fairs, Clara anchored herself at the demonstration table and laid out her evidence: frayed rope fibre, peppered feed, flecks of dragon's breath. "I think someone engineered the stampede," she told her guildmates, their faces tightening in the golden lamplight. "Harmony might not have been a random victim." Older members gasped. Younger ones immediately opened social media apps. Theories warped faster than freshly washed warp, yet no one had a complete pattern. Clara threaded her loom late into the night, rhythmic beating of the weft soothing her nerves, while her mind spun through suspects. Ember possessed the dye and resentment. Maribel alone had keys to every gate, and a stake in keeping Harmony from uncovering any questionable breeding records, a rumour Clara had overheard last month while buying fleece. Investor Brooks Denning, who financed Moonrise's expansion, carried an insurance policy that would pay handsomely if public interest spiked through scandal. Each possibility shimmered like a subtle variation in yarn thickness, visible only when held to the light. Unable to sleep, Clara biked back to the farm under a gibbous moon. Crickets stitched the darkness, and barn silhouettes loomed like giant looms themselves. She crept toward the feed shed, drawn by the click of a padlock and the beam of a small flashlight. A figure in a hoodie knelt beside a burlap sack, stuffing something inside. Clara's foot snapped a twig. The figure bolted, but Clara hooked an armful of loose netting around their ankles. They crashed into straw. She yanked back the hood to reveal Ember Fox, cheeks streaked with scarlet dye, eyes wide as spindles. "It's not what it looks like," Ember hissed. "You're stealing feed laced with pepper?" Clara demanded. Ember opened the sack. Inside lay skeins of illegal cochineal-dyed yarn, shimmering crimson-black. "Imported without tax," she confessed. "Harmony found out and threatened to expose me unless I endorsed her branded yoga-wear line." Ember's voice broke. "I wanted to hide the contraband, not hurt anyone. I swear on my loom." Clara studied her, weighing the tremor in her hands against the truth she offered. The yarn reeked of the same carmine pigment, but there was no chili pepper. Ember's guilt was real, yet not the guilt Clara sought. She helped the dye artist to her feet. "Go home," Clara said quietly. "Sort your permits tomorrow, and stay out of the paddock." Next morning, Clara visited Harmony at the county hospital. The instructor lay swathed in bandages, eyelids fluttering like fragile moth wings. When Clara introduced herself, Harmony's fingers tightened around the water cup. "They tried to muzzle me," she whispered, voice raw. "Tell Aragon." She coughed and monitors beeped. Clara leaned in. "Aragon, the stud male?" Harmony nodded, pupils dilating. Not pure. Papers, fake, Maribel, kill story. A nurse shooed Clara out. Outside, sunrise blazed peach over parking lot asphalt. Clara recalled seeing Maribel contract with high-end breeders last year, boasting that Aragon's lineage traced directly to a prize-winning Peruvian dam. If that pedigree were falsified and outed, lucrative breeding fees and the farm's prestige would unravel, especially damaging just before Brooks Denning's planned franchise expansion. Harmony, ever opportunistic, would expose the lie if it served her. That made her a threat. Clara returned to Moonrise and found Sheriff Caldwell inspecting repairs to the trampled pasture. She relayed Harmony's statement. Caldwell frowned. Maribel's been cooperative. Still, paperwork can be forged. Clara persuaded him to grant her 1 hour in the office files before official warrants would be needed. The sheriff had learned over the years that Clara's intuition wove reliable truths. The office smelled of printer ink and lanolin. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and above them hung a recent tapestry Clara herself had woven for Maribel, silver alpacas under indigo moons. She felt a sting of betrayal as she rifled through pedigree certificates. Aragon's dossier contained crisp photocopies, all signed by a Dr. Elena Vargas, a veterinarian Clara knew had retired 5 years prior to the listed exam date. Forge work, motive anchored. A soft creak of floorboards spun Clara around. Maribel stood in the doorway, clipboard clutched like a shield. No makeup now, just dark hollows under eyes. Looking for something? Truth, Clara answered. She held up the forged papers. And I found it. Maribel's shoulders sagged a fraction, then straightened with brittle resolve. Harmony blackmailed me, she said. Threatened to ruin the farm unless I cut her in. I only wanted to frighten her, show the herd could be unpredictable. Her voice cracked. I misjudged. How did you lure them? Cayenne in the feed, Maribel admitted. Cut the rope, waved them through. I thought people would scatter. I didn't mean for her to fall. Tears welled but did not spill. I love my animals, I swear. Before Clara could respond, a deputy called the sheriff from outside. Maribel's eyes flicked past Clara toward the paddock window where Aragon grazed. Without warning, she bolted down the hall. Clara chased her onto the gravel path. Maribel sprinted toward the stud barn, rope cutter glinting in hand. Clara realized she intended to destroy more evidence, perhaps send Aragon galloping into the highway, erase the living lie. Clara's weaving taught patience, not speed, yet determination carried her. She grabbed a discarded halter, and as Maribel fumbled with Aragon's stall latch, looped the halter around Maribel's elbow, jerking her arm back. The cutter clanged to the ground. They tumbled into straw. Maribel wept, the fight unraveling. Deputies arrived and cuffed her gently, as one might bind delicate yarn to prevent further fray. Harmony Bliss mended, bones knit as days lengthened toward summer. She dropped charges in exchange for a quiet settlement and exclusive rights to teach on the property once it changed hands. Brooks Denning purchased controlling interest and promised stricter ethical oversight, though Clara suspected profit would still trump principle when memory faded. Ember Fox paid her fines and, with Clara's support, launched a lecture series on safe, sustainable dye practices, her contraband skeins unraveled and rewoven into charity blankets for the wildlife rescue. As for Clara, she returned to her loom with a story knotted inside her chest, threads of greed, deception, and unintended cruelty. She spun Aragon's discarded fleece, soft but compromised lineage, into warp and weft of a new tapestry. At its center, An instructor in a saffron robe knelt amid swirling ghost hoofprints. Around her a braided gate severed in two, and above a waxing moon illuminating the calm, watchful eyes of 27 alpacas. The piece sold within an hour, the buyer praising its depth of narrative. Clara smiled, keeping the real story tucked in her heart. She understood that every fabric, like every life, holds knots invisible to the casual glance. Yet with patience and the steady gathering of each frayed strand, one could mend what threatened to tear, and in the very act of weaving, find a pattern stronger than deceit. The loom's thrum resumed, and outside the paddock stood firm, gate latched, as the sun rose once more over Moonrise Alpaca Farm.